Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Endurance Physios podcast. I'm Dr. Sam Rockwater, and I'm joined, as always, by Dr. Will Gonzaba. How we doing, Will?
Doing great, Sam.
Good, man. Today's topic, upper body strength. Things that we definitely want to cover today with upper body is, do you need it? How can it help with running and cycling? And why is it important? Those are big things that we want to essentially talk about today. I know in the past, upper body strength has been a no-no for endurance athletes, specifically for runners. Definitely, I know for some cyclists as well. And so we want to essentially kind of debunk that myth. Spoiler alert, it's a myth. So, um, Will, tell me,
Yeah.
why do we need upper body strength let's start with like running. Why do we need upper
Yeah.
body strength in running? Why is it important?
So I think there's definitely a lot of reasons why. And before we get into one of the more technical reasons, I think to kind of look at your body more holistically, right? As someone who needs to be well rounded just for your day to day life, you need some upper body strength, right? If you're a runner and you've got young kids, you're going to be lifting up anywhere from 15 to 30, 35 pounds off the ground regularly. If you have a yard that you work in, or a house that you like to do fixer up, you can agree with me when I think of runners that I've had in the past who have hurt themselves doing things around the house that are very common, like, hey, I was working on my on lawnmower all weekend and I was bent over. And after doing that, I couldn't stand up straight. And it's like, well, that sucks that it happened. But if you had more upper body strength, more core strength, those sorts of things would not be as likely to happen. So just for being a well functioning human being, you need to have that upper body and core strength. Now, I think that now that I've said that, let's talk about it a little bit more technically for running. So what a lot of people miss is that running is really a full body sport. And of course, we're going to think that the tendency is to think, oh, it's just legs. Like, I just got to move my legs fast. I don't want my legs to be too bulky. I don't want them to be too tired when I work out and run. So I'm not really going to lift weights. When I do, I'm going to lift very light, do high repetitious things. And that's sort of another myth that has been out there for a long, long time. But one of the things that I try to get my athletes and my patients to recognize is that running is a full body sport. And one of the things that we talk about with running mechanics and with walking is that we have this reciprocal pattern of running. And what that means is that as your left leg extends or goes behind you, your right leg goes forward, right? And then vice versa is happening. So it's creating this reciprocal pattern. And what your body is doing when you're in that position is you are basically creating, how do I say it, like a tension of energy going from the left leg through the right leg. And then you're bringing that tension back together. And then you're going to repeat it the opposite way, right? So there's this linkage and coordination that needs to happen between the right side and the left side of the upper body and lower body. So if you never train the brain to tap into that linked system of the body being able to coordinate an upper extremity movement to core control to a lower extremity movement, then you're really leaving a lot of power on the table, right? And so what we try to do is not just say like, okay, like you need to do upper body strength, and so just go to the gym and go pick up some dumbbells and go move them around, right? Like, we try to be really intentional with what we're doing. And I think a lot of times, you end up doing things that are also pulling in your lower extremities, your legs into the movement patterns. But we're also just going to incorporate some of that upper body linkage into the whole system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the one other thing that I would kind of mention, and I remember in PT school they very briefly introduce it, and like I know I've had actually a few runners mention it before about like fascial chains, and going up and down throughout the body. um, that's an example of like that linkage that you're talking about as well, where the fascia essentially connects us all throughout our body. Not quite like fascia and muscle is not the same thing,
Hmm.
because you can't contract fascia, but fascia can tighten. And the purpose of me bringing that up, I guess, is like to also demonstrate that, like, if it pulls on one side, it pulls on another, right?
Hmm.
And so if you have muscle that pulls in your upper body, it's going to naturally pull that lower body as well. Then another fascial chains is one. The other example of it I know is people talk about like lower cross syndrome. Now that's more for like back pain and stuff like that. But again, another example though of how it crosses from lower extremity and essentially goes up through the pelvis into the low back and into the core. Um, Two more kind of like examples of um, that like linkage from upper body to core to lower body, right? Or essentially uh, like the lower extremity. Um, and I think those are really good. I know, I have a few different exercises
Hmm.
that I use to try and like help with that. One of them that I really love, it's also a very technical exercise, but kettlebell swings is
For
definitely
sure.
something that I love, but it's also kind of technical. Um, what are a few other exercises? Like that's my favorite is kettlebell swings. I don't know if it's just a personal favorite because I enjoy doing them myself. Um, or if it's like just the fact that I like the feeling of like total body when you actually do it properly. But are there a few
Mhm.
other exercises, Will, that you would say are really beneficial for like challenging like that linkage and challenging like the reciprocal pattern
Sure.
and nature of running?
Yeah, well, I do like kettlebell swings a lot, just because I always like to program in something that is fast, like a fast movement of weight and good control. And I think a kettlebell swing is a great place to start with that for most runners and patients. You also get that hip hinge benefit of getting people very confident with that movement pattern. And I think that so kettlebell swings are awesome. Um, the ones that I have are a little bit more technical, and I think that they almost have to be, because you're trying to move your arm and your leg at the same time while controlling some amount of weight. So some of them take a little bit of control. And one of them I don't know the name to, but I've seen it before, and I like it a lot. But one that I think is maybe easy to visualize through a podcast I was actually doing these today is a kettlebell clean to an overhead press. So basically, like if you were standing over the kettlebell with it on the floor, and then you're going to clean it. So you're going to kind of pop it up to your shoulder height, and then you're going to catch it and come down into a squat position, and then immediately press up into an overhead press, right? So you're kind of getting that lower extremity quick loading, the core stabilization with that overhead press all together. So you're kind of activating all of that at once. So a little bit of coordination, a couple steps to that pattern, but I really like that a lot. Assuming nobody has overhead shoulder dysfunction. But one that I probably use more commonly in
Nice
well, I
asterisks.
mean, yeah, asterisks. Yeah, like if your shoulder hurts, don't do that.
Yeah,
All right. So talk to your PT
incorrect.
first. Yeah. So because there's something else that we should probably address. And the other one that I like a lot, and I don't know if you've seen this,
Probably.
dude, but it's I have no idea what to call it, and I'm sure you maybe have some exercises that are like this. But basically, I'll put it in my chart as a single leg stance to like an overhead chop lift pattern. So like you're standing on your left leg, for example, and holding maybe like a 10-pound, 8 to 10 pound medicine ball. You're going to start with the ball at your left hip, and you're going to start flexing your knee. So you're kind of in a single leg squat position. Then you're going to press up out of the squat and bring that ball across your body to overhead. And then you're just going to repeat that, right? And you can kind of do variations from that. But I love it because it's single leg. So, all right, running, that's important. Single leg, hip stability. And then you have to get that core control as you come up to overhead. And then you actually are going into that reciprocal flexion extension pattern. So I really, really like that one a lot. You can vary it a lot. You can like have them toss the ball at the top, or, they can come back down. You could toss the ball to them. You can make them bounce the ball off the floor when they come down. So there's lots of ways to get creative with how you're making them accept that load and stabilize the load that has any lower quarter dysfunction. Any runner that has a lower quarter dysfunction, I love doing that. So
I
I like that a lot.
I
Another one
really like
that's
that, and that's
go
actually
ahead.
I was gonna just real quick. There's another one that I kind of do that's similar to it. I call it Running Man's, for lack of a better name. But essentially, I'll try and attempt to describe it here. Um, say you are standing, it's essentially like a single leg stance. Say you're standing on your left leg. All right. Slight bend in your knee, about 20, 30 degrees of knee bend. And what you're going to do is you're going to bring your right knee up into like a 90-degree position, or like a marching position. From there, and then your arms are going to be opposite as well. So your right knee comes up, your left arm comes up, and then your right arm goes back. So as if you're in like a running position.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then what you're going to do is you're going to bend your knee slightly, and you're going to pretend like you're almost like running in slow motion, but you're still going to stay on that left hand leg. So that right knee is going to go down and back as if it's going down through like a running motion. Your arms are essentially going to switch. So your left arm is going to go from up front. So all of a sudden now your right arm is going to be up front, and your left arm is going to be back. You're going to bend your knee a little bit more, and then you return back to that starting position. And as you do that, you're going to essentially you're going to bend your knee slightly to probably like 40, 50 degrees of knee flexion, and then you're going to pop back up. So kind of a chop. You can add some weight to it, but I just like it. I like that one because it tends to be a little bit more. I use it actually as a warm up with my runners. I'll have them do that running man, as well as like a couple glute exercises just to get things firing. And that running man is like the last one right before they go running, and everyone kind of feels like all of your muscles are fired up, your glutes are fired, your hamstrings are awake, your quads are awake, you're getting a little bit of upper body work in. So that's been something, I call it running mans. So hopefully I described that okay.
I followed you. I like that, dude, and I like that you're kind of driving home just the reciprocal pattern itself, because my patients, if any of y'all listen to this, they know that I'm such a stickler for that with every exercise that they do. So like if you're doing a step up, we're doing a reciprocal pattern with the arms and the legs. If we're doing a monster walk, like you're reciprocal patterning that with your arms and your legs. And it might seem silly, but you'll be surprised at like how many people struggle with just moving the arms and legs reciprocally. That gets to I just lost the word I was looking for. The motor control, the coordination required, the rhythm. That's what I was looking for. The rhythm. Running is a rhythmic sport, and you need to be able to have that rhythm when you do your exercises. So reciprocal arms and legs. If you don't practice it, it won't be very efficient when you're applying it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, just even anything to practice that and kind of reinforce that definitely helps. Now, I know before we hit record, you mentioned a canoe and cannonball strategy. And I'm going to be honest, Will, I have no idea what you're talking about here. So hopefully, I know you talked about it in terms of... I love it, but I know you talked about it in terms of like legs and functioning and like along the same kind of lines, but tell me, what in the world is the canoe and cannonball analogy?
Okay, well, I learned it in a course. I didn't come up with it. I think Jay Sherry said it in a course that I took with him. But basically, this is basically getting to why your core strength specifically is so important. And basically, he says that if you fired a cannonball off of a canoe, what would happen to the canoe? Like the canoe would like shake all over the place and probably flip over, right? That cannonball's so big, the cannonball's too big and powerful. Right. So think about that in your body.
Okay.
Right? Like you have these legs that are normally fairly strong if you're a runner or cyclist, but if you don't have that core stability, like you're not even going to be able to tap into the full strength of what your legs could be, because your platform is not stable, right? So you have to have a stable platform, and then you're going to be able to tap into all the strength in your legs, not to mention your platform, like your spine, your pelvis, like all of that is going to feel much better if you've had any dysfunction there in the past. So that's the canoe and cannonball. You can use it in clinic.
Dude, I love that. I 100% am going to use that. It
makes sense.
Attempted to explain. Yeah, 100% makes sense to me. If you have I think I've used, what's the analogy I've used in the past? Normally, honestly, it's whatever I can come up with, like on the spot, to try and give a similar analogy. I know I've used, like putting your 2 feet together, and if I push you over, how easy is it to push you over versus if you have a wide stance, push over. Kind of like the same ideas, like having a solid base. And then I just relate that base though. Okay, that's not actually like your feet. It's actually your core, and then trying to relate it to that. But the the canoe and cannonball analogy is way better. So kudos to whoever came up with that. I like it. I'm definitely
Yep.
100%
Kudos.
going to use that. So
Wasn't
sorry,
mine, just a
patience, if
messenger.
in the future you hear me talk about this. But
Okay.
let's kind of switch gears. Let's talk. So we talked about running
Mhm.
and how that can definitely help, and with the linkage and essentially having like that chain um, of muscle work down and like the energy and the energy transfer. But tell me more about like the bike and like how can we like use that upper extremity strength that now we've built to try and essentially how does that translate to the bike?
Yeah, definitely. So if you've done some upper body, you do upper body strengthening, so you'll probably probably experienced this. I'll say that um, just to make it more succinct, one of the biggest ways that you're going to feel that is through power transfer, through your handlebars and through just your overall control of that bike and of the front end of the bike. And so, for me recently, um, I'd kind of gotten away from doing barbell bench press. Like I just don't like it very much in general. I've never been good at it, but in like November or December, I was like, you know what? I'm going to start adding this back in and just try to get better at it. So I wasn't doing any like heavy repetition of it. But I was just doing it actually every day, which, I'm not saying that you should do that every day, but this is just something I was working in the movement pattern to get better control of it every day. So, anyway, so I did that every day. Then that kind of tapered down over the next couple of weeks to doing it like once or twice a week. And I was doing a mountain bike ride a couple of weeks ago, and there's this one hill where we come up where it's super steep and it's kind of loose and gravelly. And I just felt like super connected and engaged with those bars. So if you think like that bench press, like you're really exerting your force and having to coordinate that weight as you push it up, man, that's the same thing as mountain biking, especially when things are loose and techy, or if you have to really use some torque to maneuver that bar to get up, you're going to have so much more coordination and control of that movement pattern. So I think that really when you're thinking about it, specifically for like controlling the front end of a mountain bike, like you don't need to be able to bench like twice your body weight. That's not what we're talking about in order to have that sort of carryover. It's just like getting your
You
brain.
swole, bro.
Yeah, no, dude. Very, very not swole. It's just getting your brain used to and coordinating that motion, right? Because think about it. Like if you never do it and you have to do it on the bike, like it's not going to be that great. And you won't even notice the difference until you start training it. So I really feel that in the mountain bike. I think that you could also get into just building better strength in those muscle groups for long rides that are going to be particularly chunky. I did
Even gravel
yeah,
rides. Yeah.
right. Like if you don't train those muscles to withstand that chatter for hours, you're going to fatigue there. And if you start fatiguing there, like it's just going to be hard to focus on putting power through the pedals. So, definitely a lot of important, definitely a lot of carryover that you can get from training upper body for mountain bike.
Yeah, I feel like another, we mentioned mountain bike 100%. I'm going to circle back to that in 1 second. Gravel rides, absolutely, like just taking some of the like the edge off of that kind of front end, right? You're able to kind of hold yourself up and kind of essentially have a little bit more of that chatter. But another one that I think a lot of people really forget about is triathlon. Like when you're in that triathlon position and you're down and tucked in there, like the amount of parascapular strengthening and strength, not strengthening, but strength that you need in order to hold that position without like thoracic pain is actually quite a bit. It's pretty substantial. And I think a lot of people really forget about like the mid traps and the rhomboids, which for those of you who are not familiar with anatomy, essentially it's the muscles between your two shoulder blades. There's a couple layers of them, mid trap or middle trapezius, if you will, and then the rhomboids. But that's also one other sport in the endurance realm of cycling where like it takes a lot of strength in order to actually like sit through there.
I think people kind of get it can be hard for people to see the link, because they're like, oh, well, you know, you're telling me that I need to build endurance in the muscle. So I just need to like be in the position more is generally what they think, right? Like I need to be on my trainer in my TT position longer, and not
Mm-hmm.
really understanding
Yes,
how, you know,
all the
doing
time.
upper back strength is going to translate into having better muscular endurance. So can you speak to that a little bit as to like how those two things connect? Because I think it can feel counterintuitive at times.
Right. Yeah. Right. So, for example, I'll give you a story. I had a triathlete who I was programming strength training for. Um, Everything was going pretty well. It was into like middle of like the second block that I was training. So we were like about almost 16 weeks in at this point um, to training. And I wrote up a little circuit. And one of them was like a heavy bent over row. um, and, we worked on a whole bunch of like scapular strength prior to that. And I remember this triathlete in particular being like, I can't do that. I'm like, what do you mean you can't do that? They're like, it hurts every time like the weight like drops, right? Or like pulls on their shoulder. And I was like, how? Okay. I'm like, that's fine. Like we're gonna lighten the weight first of all because that's always an option. Um, but I went to him and I'm like, how do you sit in that position? You're training for a full Ironman, right? Which is 112 miles on the bike. Ideally, you're going to be in that position as much as possible. I'm like, how, if you don't have any strength or if you don't have enough strength to lift like bent over row, like 40 pounds, how are you going to be able to sustain that position for 5, 6, 7 hours? Right. And he was just kind of looking at me like, because I train that way. And I was like, yeah, like you can train by sitting there, but like you're gonna have back pain, that thoracic back pain. There's a lot of crossover between strength and endurance, and I think that's like the big thing that you were like trying to ask about. Um, being, let me give you another small side story. I did a rotation with Atlanta Falcons, the NFL team. When I was there, I spent a lot of time in the strength room because we had some downtime, and those guys were awesome, and I was picking their brain a ton, right? Because I already picked the ATs and the PTs brains plenty, and so I went in over to the strength side. Anyways, one of the guys, we were talking about how like strength and endurance matter, and like how to program for it. And he goes, "Okay, if you have a guy who wants to squat uh, 200 pounds, right? And they need to squat that 200 pounds once, right? Would you take the guy who has a max squat of 210 pounds for 3 repetitions, or would you take the guy who can squat 350 pounds once? What would you take, Will? Yeah, yeah. So sorry. I should explain this a little bit better. The goal here, I know, I'm sorry. The goal here is essentially you want a guy who can squat you want to see somebody squat 200 pounds, right? Would you rather take the guy who can squat 210 pounds 3 times, or take the guy who can squat 300 pounds? We'll just say 300 pounds once. Which of those two guys? Which one? Right. Why? That's the correct answer. Why? Yes, 100%. That's the correct answer. And the reason being is if you ask that guy who can squat 300 pounds once to squat 200 pounds, right, for maximum repetitions, he's probably going to be able to knock out what, 20, 25 of those. If you take a guy who can squat 210 3 times, and that's his like theoretical max, right? And if you have him squat 200 pounds, that's so close to his maximum that he's not going to be able to get so many reps, right? When you want to and that's like when the light bulb first like clicked for me for like how important strength is for endurance, right? So you want to be that guy who can squat that 300 pounds once, even though he can only do it once, but he can squat 300 pounds. That 300 pounds or 200 pounds out of the 300 pounds is a less of a percentage versus the 210 to 200 pounds. Does that kind of make sense? So when you try and strength train, you want to make sure that you're able to you want to make sure that you're able to essentially strength train as much as possible and like get as strong as possible while still, and then what will happen is that you'll actually build up endurance through that. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. I know it's kind of a convoluted way of describing why it's so important, but it's certainly um, something that I found to be super important with strength training.
Yeah,
So
I think too, you can think about like building fatigue resistance in muscle groups, right? And like there are multiple ways to do that, right? So you can build fatigue resistance through endurance training. So whether that's the legs or the periscapular muscles for triathlon position. So there's that piece of it, which you're already doing. But another way you can build fatigue resistance is by making the muscle actually stronger, right? And that requires a different mode of training than the endurance. And so if you're just looking at how to make this muscle overall functioning better, being able to withstand these longer races, harder efforts, that's just such a critical component of it. I know that
absolutely.
in one of my I hate to give examples of like, oh, this one season when I was doing a lot of weightlifting, but this one season when I was doing a lot of weightlifting, I just don't like it because it's like, it's
one
not
time at
always,
band camp.
that's one. Well, you know how we get all like research minded sometimes, and you're like, oh, well, cool, that was for you that one time. But my main discipline that I like to race is cyclocross, which they're short durations. They're like 40 to 50-minute races, and there's a lot of it's very high intensity, right? So there's a lot of repeated efforts over and over and over and over and over. So you have a lot of times where you're going from a very slow speed, like maybe coming out of a corner, to boom on the gas, and you repeat that over and over every lap. And so you really have to have a lot of like pop, a lot of power, and a lot of strength to go from those slow speeds to getting up to a sprint and being able to repeat that. So anyway, the season I think I raced best, had my best cyclocross season, was also the year I was lifting the heaviest weight. I think for sure it was the heaviest my deadlift max was. I have no idea what the number was anymore. But like I definitely put on probably something around that range. I don't want to brag on air for everybody, but it was something in the fives. but I
mean, have you seen this guy's legs or what?
That year, dude, they were pretty big. That year, I had to get some bigger shorts. But anyway, man, no. But just to say, like, I felt that, right? You feel that power transfer more when you take it to the bike.
Yeah.
If you're training it in the gym, so definitely mark it up there for cyclocross. Super important. So, okay.
Yeah.
So I think that
hold on. I got one other thing, Will.
Okay.
One other thing for it, real quick, and then we'll continue. Sorry. The other thing that also I want to mention too, you mentioned a story about, like cyclocross and like how when you lifted and stuff. When I was a collegiate swimmer, I had fairly big shoulders, right? I had much stronger shoulders than what I currently do because I don't swim 6 to 7 days a week anymore. So I had much stronger shoulders, and I could 100% tell that in mountain biking, I was and I had super strong core because of all those 1.5 million flip turns that I did. I could tell though that I was getting away with things on the mountain bike that I really shouldn't be getting away with because I was able to like quickly adjust and put force through those handlebars. So just another kind of like thing, anecdotal, I guess, of like a time, you mentioned like when you're cyclocross and whatever. For me, when I was swimming, I wasn't necessarily lifting, but I was lifting during the swim season as well, but I was definitely getting away with more things than what I should have. And also too, that's another good point is that just because you're getting away with it doesn't mean you shouldn't train it, because
Right.
that is one thing that definitely I should continue and have now again started continue. But anyways, just real quick, I know I interrupted you. Go ahead, Will.
No, it's okay. No, because you brought up another thought of like on the getting away with it thing, which I think that's important to bring up. But I was thinking about this getting away with like almost crashing or almost falling but saving it because like you had good core control. So like also on the mountain bike or cross, like can you think of times on your mountain bike where you've taken something too hot and
Yes.
that front wheel almost washes out? And I had this the other day, front wheel almost washes out, right foot comes unclipped, and I'm like right hand off, and I'm like, oh, I'm about to fall. And then you just have enough core control to kind of pull it all back in and continue on your ride, like by the grace of God and a little bit of core control. So I think that there's like a lot of goes into that
Hey
too.
man, chalk it up as a win.
Yeah, I did. Walked away, no scratches. It was a win. So there's that to say too, right? If you're almost going to crash, having a little bit of core control is good. Also, if you do crash, having some upper body mass, a little bit of muscle on those bones will help you from getting too hurt, hopefully. So
Little meat goes a long way. Little meat goes a long way.
It does.
Yes.
It does. So what I think would be helpful is just to kind of talk through, okay, if you have been lifting weights and you want to start adding some upper body to it, or if what are some strategies you can do in order to do that? So I kind of put it together a little outline that I'll follow a lot because I think it's super simple. And then maybe we can chime in on like what exercises we like in these categories. But what I'll typically have people do is pick 4 exercises, right? So you're going to pick 1 upper body push, 1 upper body pull, 1 core strength exercise, and then a bonus of like 1 fast movement or plyometric. Okay, and this is just addressing upper body. This doesn't get into lower body.
Okay.
Okay, so that's 4. Okay, so upper body push. What would be your go-to?
Upper body push. I love landmine presses.
Oh, really good one.
I love them. I don't know why. I love them. Athletes hate them, but I love them. So maybe that's why I love them more. I don't know. What about you?
Landmine presses are awesome. That's really good. I was gonna do I was gonna pick just an overhead press, like a split squat overhead press, with a kettlebell. I really like that. Like the instability overhead. I like either working people from that static position, just your split squat, you're pushing it, or like probably what you do with that landmine is starting with the feet together and then kind of going into the split, right? So jetting off the left leg forward, and then throwing the arm up overhead. I really like that a lot. I think that's a solid.
Yeah, that's a great like progression and advancement of the landmine.
Okay,
like
upper body pull. What would you take?
It's something that I'm terrible at, and always have been terrible at it, but I'm really trying to get better this year, and that's a pull-up.
A pull-up, yeah, it's solid.
I
think you can really feel, like when we talk about chains, kinetic chains, I think you can really feel it in a pull-up position, and I think it's just because everything's under tension, so you're gonna have to you'll feel that, you know.
I don't know if it's like my swimmer like roots that are like making me want to do pull-ups or what, or maybe it's like the lat engagement that's similar to like swimming. I don't know, but for whatever reason, pull-ups.
How many pull-ups could you do when you were like primetime swim mode, Sam?
You know, I wasn't very good at pull-ups when I was a swimmer, which is amazing because do you know what a lat clap is? All the swimmers listening to this are going to be laughing right now. Have you ever seen everyone always knows it. Every 4 years, the Olympics comes around, and they always have the guys, and you always see them where they're kind of like raise their hands kind of like to shoulder height and then like slap them down.
Oh, yeah.
And if you can actually hear them, the muscle actually slaps against like the rib cage and slaps against itself, and that's called like a lat slap. So I used to be able to do that, which normally means that you have very big and strong lats. But joke was on me because I apparently did not have strong enough lats. I think so. Classic lat slapper. But I would say I could probably do, I don't know, 15, 18 when I was in like prime time. And again, I should have trained them more, but my goal is to be able to do 25 pull-ups. I'm glad I'm saying this now because it'll make me do it. 25 pull-ups straight by the end of the year. So that's my goal.
You got that. Okay, cool. That's a lot of pull-ups, but I believe in you.
Yeah. Anyways, what's your pull?
My upper body pull, well, my favorite pull, of course, is going to be a deadlift. but I'm gonna say that maybe he's gonna dip too
Upper
much into
body.
lower body. Well, I think you can debate that. There's a lot of upper body in that too, but
Eh,
but it's not a man. It's not an upper body.
give me
My
a
favorite
pure upper body pull.
pure upper body pull. I'm gonna do a barbell bent over row. So kind of
Ooh,
gonna get you in that
like
hinge
it.
pattern again. It's a little bit more stable, so it feels safer because you're not moving through that range of motion like a deadlift. Good core control, good shoulders, everything on the posterior chain, and you do get a little bit of glute work because you're in that hinge pattern too. So barbell bent over row, probably my favorite. What
Like
about
it.
you?
Like
You
it.
did yours. You did yours.
I already did mine.
You're right.
But
Okay.
I'll do a core one though.
Yeah, let's do core now.
Um, I really love chops. So,
Oh yeah.
if it's a down chop or an up chop, for those of you who don't know, essentially, you're standing and you have either a weight, or my favorite is more of like a resistance band, or like one of those like big loop super bands is what they're called. But essentially, you take it; it should be down, say like on your right hip, and then you bring it up. Oh, I'm hitting my microphone. And now you're bringing it up and across your body, up above your head on the left hand side. That's an up chop. A down chop is just the opposite. So you'll start at the top and you'll pull it down. Those are probably my two favorite, or one favorite if you want to call it. But I love doing chops.
I
That's my
love a
favorite
good chops.
rotational.
Yeah, I love chops too. I'll say
What
that
about
my
you?
favorite core control. I guess a chop is the end of that rotational pattern too, but I think a rotational core control that I really like is, I don't know what you would. Oh, I guess it'd be like using the TRX band. You're in a push up position. Your feet are in the TRX straps, and then you're going to hold that push up position. Bring the right knee to the left elbow, and then come back out, slow and control, and then opposite. Super hard, man. I mean, I can only do like 3 each way.
Dude, you're a glutton
If
for
you're
punishment, man.
Dude, but it's so good. The same thing, like you really feel the connection, right? Feel the connection. There's ways
Yeah.
to regress it, but that's a good one. But again, it's just getting to challenging rotational control through the legs. So I like that one a lot.
Nice.
Oh,
I'm gonna give a bonus one here for the core as well.
all right,
Have
hit
you ever
us.
done dumbbell halos?
Yeah, just like, are you just doing it in the standing position, bringing it around your head?
Yeah. Um, yes, but put your feet together,
Mm-hmm.
or put your feet in like a tandem stance, which is one in front of the other,
Ooh,
like a heel toe kind of thing, and then do it. And you go one direction and then the opposite direction. Um, I really like that. I think it gets a good burn for the upper body, your triceps, your deltoids, and also to like your core and your obliques. Um, if you use enough weight and if your core is not strong enough, it will be on fire with a kettlebell halo. But
yeah, no, I
just a
like
bonus. Had to throw
that.
it in there because I
That's a
did it
good.
today and I was like, oh, I gotta go. I gotta think about this.
I did that
Gotta
as
throw it
my
out
warm.
there.
I did that as my warm up a couple weeks ago. I think with a plate, maybe like a 5 pound
Nice.
or 10 pound bumper plate, just to get like bigger range. And dude, my core was
Ah.
so sore the next day. I was not expecting that.
Abs of steel. Here we go.
I wish. Okay,
Yeah.
so we had the last our last category was a fast movement. This was a bonus exercise you could add into your routine.
Maybe I'm gonna do the halo as a bonus because I'm kind of stumped right now. It's,
Yeah, it's
it's
hard.
still a
It's
bonus
late to
movement.
think about that. Yeah. We mentioned kettlebell swings in the past, but I really like kettlebell swings as one. If we're thinking about weights that you're moving quickly, I guess any exercise you could move it quickly, or you could vary it to just reduce weight and focus more on moving the weight quickly, and it could be that. But I think kettlebell swings lend itself to being a faster movement because it's very rhythmic. So I think that it's an easier one to get some quick motion, quick contractions behind.
I got one. I thought of one. Um, I would say a one arm kettlebell clean.
Ooh, like
Um,
it.
or like a one arm kettlebell like high pull.
Hmm.
Um, I've I've done those before and I really like those. So I'm gonna go with that. That's my bonus fast movement.
Cool. I like it. I like it.
But yeah, I think that's a good way to like program an upper body strength circuit or like workout day is to add like those 4 in, and then you can go and circuit those, or do a push and a pull, and then like rotational and fast movement, pair those two together and whatever. I think that's really good. I try and incorporate upper body strength into all the workouts that I do, but most of my endurance athletes, I'm doing total body workouts with them, because they don't want to have time to do a upper body day and then a lower body day and then a total body day or whatever. They don't want to do that. They just want to get like one done and go. But I do like, though, how you mentioned and how you like program that out, where you have a push, a pull, some sort of rotational strength or stability, and then also to like a fast movement. So I like that.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
I know, other than I'm with you in the programming, is I don't like doing a upper body versus lower body day, especially for endurance athletes, because when they see upper body day, the temptation to skip that is going to be very high. So full body is the way to go. And like we said earlier, we're really like the examples we just gave, I think, are simple yet effective, but really like when you're getting into the more complexities of it, the movements are going to incorporate a lot of both upper and lower extremities. So I think just full body days is the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it, Will. Thanks for another great episode.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully everyone, buddy. Hopefully you guys got something out of this. And if all else fails, hopefully we're at least somewhat entertaining with our cannonball and other miscellaneous stories. But anyways, to wrap it up, thank you guys so much. Please like, subscribe, and follow on wherever you are seeing this. Also, too, one thing that we haven't done that we really need to do, Will, is we need to plug our Instagram handles so then people can find us. So, Will, what is your Instagram handle that you would like people to find you at?
Yeah, you can get me at my personal Instagram account. That's at Will Gonzaba, Gonzaba, or at my clinic account. That's at Almost Park Physio. That's OLMOSPARKPHYSIO. I have to think about that every time I spell it out. All right, Sammy, what about you? Where can they find you?
Yes, they can find me on the IG. My handle is The Endurance Physio. That is with 2 E's. So it's THE and then another E, NDURANCE, PHYSIO. I feel like I'm saying the alphabet when I do that. When I do the whole thing. But The Endurance Physio, the and endurance both have an E, so there's 2 E's in there. Otherwise, feel free to join us and on the conversation there. Comment, like, subscribe. Thank you guys. As always, we will see you next time.
Thanks, y'all.
Peace.